Another week, another road game against a top 3 opponent. The Buckeyes weren't sharp against Nebraska, and another performance like that would mean a very sad day in Happy Valley. Historically, the Buckeyes have owned Penn State, but history doesn't put points on the board like the present, and these Buckeyes still have something to prove after the past couple games. The winner is back in the driver's seat on the road to Indianapolis. The loser can start making other plans for early December. It's Ohio State against Penn State. Can the Buckeyes be Korean Kings? We're about to find out. The Football Fever starts right now.
Welcome into the Football Fever. I'm Kellyanne Stitz, joined by our former Buckeyes, Ben Buchanan, Obie Stillwell, and Jay Richardson. Our Dave Holmes is in enemy territory this morning. We'll get to him, I know, later in the show. He's got boots on the ground, but guys, looking at this one today, a huge one in Penn State. Ohio State, looking at the record, Ohio State is 22-8 since Penn State joined the Big Ten. Ohio State has won 7 straight against the Nittany Lions, but this is a big one, guys. 2 versus 3. Somebody's got to come out. And I know, Jay, you and I were talking. You're a little bit superstitious, a tad nervous.
So whenever there's a big game, and there's a game again, Buckeye fans, don't hate me for this, I don't feel as confident in, I tend to lean into my Buckeye spirit and throw on scarlet and gray, as you can see, with some checkers here and all that. It's really just to get myself focused and really get me wrapped around the idea that we should win this game. Ohio State has every opportunity to do what they need to do and still be where they want to be at the end of the season. But nothing happens unless either James Franklin or Ryan Day proves they're going to be the big game coach today.
That's right. And the Buckeyes they were so close in Oregon, just a 1-point loss on the road. I'm sure these guys are really, really hungry to finally get that done today this season. Guys, how are you feeling?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's interesting because it's a familiar foe. At the same time, I think there's a contradiction, right? Ohio State is highly ranked, but I'm not sure how much confidence they're actually going into this game with. And I wonder about their personality. I think this is a game that they're going to try to figure out. What's our personality,
identity,
right? Yeah, what is our identity? So to me, that's interesting. I do think there's some grace there, some interesting things because Will Howard, Pennsylvania kids, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but also I think there's saving grace. Not only is the storyline, but another saving grace is that the game is being played at noon.
Interesting.
Statistics show that most Americans drink alcohol after 6 p.m. And I think that's going to factor in because I've been in Happy Valley at a night game, and I've been in Happy Valley at noon, and there's a difference.
That's a good point.
That's a good point, Obie. But listen, my first road game at Penn State was a noon kick, and I'll say this again, the press box was literally shaking.
It does.
That's how the environment gets. But to your point, I'm sure it's still
it's much louder at night.
Yeah, with that whiteout.
For sure.
You know, guys, great environment, but players have to play in a game like this. But as Jay mentioned, coaches have to coach. This is really can you win the big game here? Ryan Day, he's won all the games that he should here at Ohio State in the Big Ten Conference preseason, if you will. But you look at this stat: 2-6 in top 5 games here at Ohio State. And I heard Joey Galloway saying earlier this week, and it describes it well. I think Ryan should be here. He's a phenomenal coach, full stop. But you can feel the clouds kind of coming in now where it's like you really need to win this game here in Columbus. James Franklin as well, 3-17 as the head football coach at Penn State versus top 10 teams, right? So who's going to take this one? This is going to be an exciting one to watch today.
Certainly a lot of pressure on both
there more
coaches.
Pressure on?
Oh, see, there we go.
Because that's the real question. Both of these guys are on a warm seat. The seat's heating up. You got 2 top 5 teams. Whichever one of these guys loses this game, there was going to be more pressure on them than any coach in all of college football. That is a fact.
Yeah, the pressure cooker at Beaver Stadium today. But let's get into it, guys. It's now time for your Atlas Butler offensive checkup. It was a clunky performance by the offensive line against Nebraska, and the group will be challenged today by a formidable defensive front, anchoring the Nittany Lions' 4th-ranked defense. I caught up with former Buckeye center Billy Price, who was a part of the 2014 National Championship team and went on to play 5 seasons in the NFL. Price weighs in on that next man up mentality and his biggest concern heading into Happy Valley.
It takes time for the offensive line to gel. It takes time. And, I think I want to use probably the best example is that 2014 team. For instance, I can speak on my behalf. I was the young guy. I was the guy who, inexperienced, had to step up to match Taylor Decker, to match Kobe, Pat, Daryl Baldwin, some of the guys that I was playing with. So it takes time in that maturation process, and having a consistent lineup makes a big difference. I think the biggest frustration that again I consistently see in my own personal thing is what is our identity as an offense? This is the biggest thing, and again, based on our experiences, 2014, 15, 16, 17, Ohio State came to town. You knew what we were doing. I mean, we
So Zen Michalski struggled at times at left tackle against the Cornhuskers, but he is out today. Donovan Jackson shifted to left tackle when Zen went down. Luke Montgomery filled in at guard for Jackson. Ryan Day did not say who will start at left tackle today. So Jay, how do you continue to build that continuity that Billy had mentioned at this point in the season with new faces continuing to rotate on that line?
That's a great question. You know, it's easy to say next man up mentality.
Right.
We hear that so much in sports, but this is difficult because offensive lines are units, man. And these guys have to gel.
Yeah.
They have to work together. They have to be on a string, as you know, Obi. And when you have one go down and then another go down, and now you got a left guard who's all Big Ten kicking out to left tackle, that is a completely different position, and he is going to be playing in space against some top tier guys. So our producer asked me, you know, who really scared, well, what issue might come up that scared me in this game? And I said, I swear it's Abdul Carter for Penn State versus anybody on the Ohio State offensive line. And then also Zane Durant in the middle there, who's the defensive tackle, who's got 2.5 sacks. And then you got number 11 with 4 sacks. That is something that really concerns me. And it's going to be on Ryan Day and this offensive line to build a game plan that does not expose the left side of the offensive line.
Got to protect Will Howard. Now, injuries are an unfortunate part of the game, but Obi, do you think the Buckeyes have the depth and the talent needed on the offensive line to pave the way to a national championship at the end of the year?
You know what? You hope so.
Right.
This game is going to actually answer a lot of those questions. You know, people ask me like, hey, what does the offensive line look like to you? I said, patchwork. Right?
Yeah.
It looks like patchwork. I remember when I had my sons busted a hole in the wall and I had to go in there and patch it, right? A buddy of mine, Percy King, former Buckeye, came over and I said, hey, man, I was proud because I'm not a handyman. I was like, hey, look at this. He said, how does it look? He said, looks like patchwork, right? Over time, I got better, right? And you can't tell from the original drywall to now my patchwork. Unfortunately, my sons kept putting holes in the wall. But what I'm saying is this: as time moves on, this patchwork-looking offensive line should get better. This is one heck of an atmosphere to learn in, right? But they're going to have to figure this thing out, and they're going to have to. And Jay and I were talking a little bit about this before the show. How many reps are we giving to our second and third string players to make sure that they're ready for this type of atmosphere? There's a lot of questions to be answered. I think they'll answer them today. Do they have what they say they have in the 4- and 5-star athletes? We hope so. I believe they do. I'm a little bit of a homer, you know that, but I hope they do.
Well, and to your point too, with the reps of the 2s and 3s, like how much do you give them that in the preseason to start building that depth in case things like this do happen? So to your point, we'll see a lot and learn a lot about what that patchwork offensive line looks like. Now, Ohio State struggled on 3rd down, converting only 1 of 10 opportunities, and the run game stalled with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins combining for just 54 yards on 10 carries each. The Buckeyes rushed for a season-low 64 yards last weekend, guys, just 83 yards in the last 6 quarters of play.
That's crazy.
Ben, Billy mentioned being frustrated with the lack of identity with this offense. Are you confident that they can get that run game going and build a balanced attack?
Confident remains to be seen. I'm optimistic. I'll put it that way. I mean, we have the athletes. We, as Jay said last week, there's more stars on this team that are on the stars and stripes of the flag here. I mean, this offensive line, they've recruited well, they've developed well. But Billy Price, going back to him, I remember, with Urban Meyer, they called him the apex. He was the apex of the offense, starting with Corey Lindsley before him and Billy Price and all the great centers that we've had come after him. So just a challenge for our offensive line this game. Impose your will, right? This is a classic Big Ten matchup. Listen, you can have the trick plays. We can push the ball down the field. I understand this is the new era of college football. It's 2024, but at the end of the day, it's mano-y-mano. It's that blue and white versus that scarlet and gold. So you have to be able to run the football. And the running backs, let's be honest, guys, way too talented for that yards per carry. Quinshon came here, on a mission from Ole Miss. Travion has been one of the most special backs in college football. We've seen that for a long time. So 1 for 10 on 3rd downs, that's not going to get it done. You don't need me to tell you that. So So I'm optimistic that we're going to get it right because you're going to have to in Beaver Stadium today.
Right. And a huge area of focus for these Buckeyes this week preparing for the Nittany Lions. Now, this game against Penn State has playoff implications. Even with this new era where the top 12 teams qualify, any loss could spell the end of your national championship. Take a look at what the bracket would look like with the current AP rankings. OSU would have a 2021 Sugar Bowl rematch against Clemson.
Oh, yeah.
Although this one would be played in the comfort of the shoe. If they win, then they'd play Miami. Penn State, despite being undefeated, would not get a first-round bye. As for Oregon, they would get a first-round bye and would play the winner of the Tennessee-Notre Dame game. Even though Indiana is undefeated, they'd still miss out of the playoffs because they're ranked outside of the top 12. Something we are going to be keeping an eye on as we close in on the month of contenders. Now, the Buckeyes have faced 2 top 3 opponents on the road this season. I believe they're the only team to have played 2 top 3 opponents this season. Can Ohio State afford to take a loss today and still make the playoffs? I think they can, depending on how close this game is. Obi, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts?
I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, you look and you say, okay, is this thing still wide open? I mean, as long as OSU, the teams that OSU lost to, Oregon, hopefully not Penn State, as long as those teams keep winning, right? That will affect them. Also, I look at Ohio State and it's still in their hands, right? They can still run the table after this and be where they should be. Ohio State does have a way of performing in the latter part of the season, and I think they know that. I think the voters know that.
And you want that too, right?
And you want that. Will they do it? Do they have the manpower? Do they have the skills? Do they have the players to actually do it? Yes. I think that's what we're waiting for is the awakening of when are they going to show up in all the majesty of what they actually could be.
Right.
We'll see.
No better time than today. Jay, do you think that the Buckeyes can take a loss today and still make the playoffs?
One word, no.
Wow.
If the Ohio State Buckeyes lose against Penn State on the road, even though it's a top 5 opponent, even though Penn State could go on to win plenty more games and make it look like a good loss, just like Oregon did, the problem is this. If you lose this game, this kind of puts this team in the tank, both mentally and emotionally. Who's to say they're going to go and beat Michigan? Who's to say they're going to go and beat Indiana, okay, a top-tier football team that's got some dogs on that team, a bunch of transfers. I don't know how that works, but you take momentum and wind out of the sails, and then it becomes a really, really difficult thing. You'll get a lot of name calling and finger pointing in that locker room and all around Columbus, and then the pressure on Ryan Day becomes insurmountable. So, no, I think this is a must-win football game for Ohio State.
Is Penn State who everyone thinks they are? Or do you think there's some question mark on how strong Penn State
Obi, that's the good thing.
A good question.
I don't think Penn State is a great football team. Okay, I watched that USC game. It was a battle of who wants to lose worse because no one wanted to win all that much. It was a rough game to watch. And when you really watch Penn State, they don't do tons of things well. They don't throw the deep ball very well. They do a lot of short passes. They don't always run the ball consistently. Their defense is spotty at times, but they do have a couple good pass rushers that show up here and there. Honestly, they look a lot like Ohio State can look on games where they're not playing very great. So that's why this is such an interesting matchup.
Well, and James Franklin tends to clam up a little bit in these big games as well. So we'll see what happens there. Now, you never want to control your own destiny, right, guys? So looking even at the Big Ten championship, they can't lose today if they want to make it to Indy. Then at that point, if they do, you have to have Oregon lose to Michigan today. Oregon dropped 2 on the season. Indiana dropped 2 on the season. Ben, as we asked the guys, do you think that they could afford a loss today? Or as Jay said, is this a must-win game? Of course you want to win them all, but just looking at the caliber of this matchup.
It's a must-win because you come to Ohio State for Big Ten championships. You come to beat the team up north. Now in today's day and age, you want to go deep into the college football playoff or win a national championship, right? Myself, an undefeated season in 2012. Jay Richardson, 2002 national champion. Obi has a pair of gold pants, Big Ten championship as well. So you come here to win the heart. I look at a guy like Jack Sawyer, right? A local guy who's done, unbelievable things. Such an unselfish football player, just an absolute dog out there. He came back, one of those 5-star guys. We talked about it last show. JTT as well. How many 5-star guys are we seeing lasting 4 years here at even Ohio State? That's a statement in and of itself. It's because it means something for them to come back to win a Big Ten title, to get to Indy, to beat the team up north. Sure, could they get in the 12-team playoff? I believe they still could, but the question is, are you accelerating or are you slowing down into that momentum? This would be a massive slowdown, obviously, if they lost in Beaver Stadium. Great chance for them to have a statement win in the Ryan Day era, a top 5 matchup on the road, really get that monkey off your back today.
Right. And see those leaders step up and accomplish those goals that they all came back to do. Now, coming up on the Football Fever, Shank City. Jaden Fielding has struggled to put the ball through the uprights this year. How Ohio State special teams aren't playing so special. Plus, how the win may be over heading to Happy Valley is still spooky, though. We'll break down our fears heading into this top 5 matchup against the Nittany Lions and treat you with a blast from the past. You are watching the Football Fever.
It's on the way. No good. He hooked it. And Georgia is going to survive.
Go. Good snap. Clean hold, and he pushed it wide right. Nebraska still in this game.
Different stakes, but similar struggles. Jaden Fielding seeing shades of Noah Ruggles there, slicing a field goal against Nebraska wide right. And that one against Georgia is still hot speed, guys. Special teams has been an issue for Ohio State this season. Fielding hasn't only been hit or missed an extra points and field goals. He's also struggled with kickoffs as well. Ben, your thoughts on why this unit continues to struggle more and more, especially as the season goes on?
Well, the standard is the standard, and the fact is they've not been up to the standard thus far, right? I mean, special teams, you have to be special. I remember my time at Ohio State with Tress, with Urban. I like to look at it like this. Is it a burden or is it a privilege to play on special teams? Now, maybe it's different for the kickers and the punters, but what I'm getting at is the overall culture. If you're on kickoff return, you're returning punts, right? It was an honor for those starters to be on, on that starting lineup for special teams and get the job done. Now look at Jaden Fielding. Last year was a very consistent kicker for us.
Right.
I don't know if it's a mental thing. He has an injury that's been lagging him.
Right.
We talked about that in previous shows as well. But I sound like a broken record, guys, every time I get on here and talk about special teams because we hear it all the time, right? When talent is equated, special teams are magnified. And the fact is, this is a top 5 matchup on the road. This is a game where every yard is going to matter. 1 yard is worth 2, 5 yards is worth 10, right? It just means that much more, whether you're talking about a kickoff return, whether you're talking about making that field goal. We were joking in pregame. I thought I might even manifest it today. If it comes down to a kick, I have a lot of confidence in my guy, Jaden Fielding, right? The season is not over. You can still right the ship. I like him to make some kicks for us today.
And building that confidence that we talked about earlier, right? Now, being special on special teams is crucial for a championship contender. Have to be winning in all 3 phases. They're often the deciding factor in close games. Jay, what are your thoughts on what the Buckeyes' inability seems to be to put together a strong unit in recent years?
When was the last time we saw a critical big-time kick go through the uprights for Ohio State?
Yeah.
When was the last time we saw a punt that flipped the field for Ohio State? When was the last time we saw a kick return that absolutely changed the course of that game? It has been a long time, and I think it comes down to this. It's one thing that Ben started to allude to a second ago. We used to see big-time starters always playing on special teams. That was always something that Urban was big on, Tress was big on. He would have Santonio Holmes, Ted Ginn back there. These are first-round talents at wide receiver, and they were the guys that were returning punts and kicks. He would have them as gunners and anti-gunners out there making big plays, downing the football inside the 1, because you put your best players on all 3 units, and I don't think you take any unit for granted. And I'm not saying this current staff is taking the special teams unit for granted. What I'm saying is you've got to put your best players on the field at all times to give yourself the best chance to have good opportunities happen.
Well, guys, Ryan Day guaranteed a kickoff or a punt return for a touchdown this season. Would be nice to see that one today. Now, the special teams issues are scary, but so was walking into Happy Valley after a lackluster victory over Nebraska. And even though it is a noon kick instead of a night game, whiteout Beaver Stadium will still be rocking. Like I mentioned earlier, literally the last noon game I was there, the press box was shaking. So let's discuss what scares us about this top 4 matchup against Penn State. For me, it's the health of the offensive line against this Penn State pass rush with a boogeyman coming off the edge and Abdul Carter. Their roller coaster ground game also scares me too. They have to establish the run against Penn State. There is no reason Trey Henderson and Quinshon Judkins shouldn't have at least 100 rushing yards apiece. Quinshon and Trey didn't even crack 60 combined against Nebraska. That's just unacceptable. Jay, what scares you the most about this one?
I mean, you kind of stole mine there because I'm with you. The left side of the offensive line scares me. Abdul Carter scares me. He's wearing number 11. That's the Micah Parsons number. Yes. LeVar Arrington. I mean, that is the, if you wear 11, you're supposed to be that dude from Penn State. And to have that dude looking out there at the offensive line that's missing somebody at a very important spot, which is protecting Will's blind spot, That is critical. We saw what JT did a couple years ago when Penn State was missing their offensive lineman. We don't want to see the flip of that happen for our guys. So that's huge. And then second, I think it's about Chip Kelly and getting into an offensive play calling rhythm. And can he come up with a game plan that protects the offensive line so that they can protect Will Howard, which means you're going to see a lot of quick passes, stuff on the perimeter, a lot of fast-hitting runs. They're not going to leave the ball in Will's hands for more than 3 seconds to give this defensive line opportunity to wreck this football game.
Obi, what scares you?
Our inability to be unpredictable. Our coaches, I believe, at this point in time, most especially our offense, is so predictable. We got very predictable against Nebraska, and it's hard for me to believe that their coaches are that much better than our coaches. But there's something about what we're doing, what Ohio State is doing out there that is predictable. And if we get into Ohio State gets predictable in Happy Valley, that scares me.
Yeah. Ben, for you, I mean, it's a tough place to play at. What scares you about this one?
Playing too conservative. I think it's a natural piggyback off of yours. You want to play to win, not play not to lose, right? And again, that's a big difference right there. We've all been in games like that where, hey, you're a little tentative. Hey, you feel the energy, the top 5 matchup. Yes, there's 110,000 in there, but we play in front of 100,000 plus Scarlet and Gray every single Saturday. So don't let the moment be too big. Exactly. Chip Kelly obviously has earned his stripes well, beyond college football, professional and such. So get after it, be aggressive, push the ball down the field. I'd like to see us, if possible, be able to establish the run, right? That sets up the play action. That's just how quality football works. And for the defense, you always say, let the guy pin their ears back and let them get after it, right? Let's engage in some blitzes. Let's put some pressure on Drew Aller. Just want to see a very aggressive football team today.
If this begins to look like an obstacle instead of an opportunity,
right,
there's the problem. And that is the psyche that begins in the locker room with the coaches, right? And say, hey, listen, guys, this is an opportunity. But if they start looking like this is an obstacle,
you can feel that energy, right? It's palpable. You can feel that.
That's a different mindset.
An opportunity with also a Drew Aller who isn't 100%, right? Who just injured previously. I believe he wasn't on the health report. I have to go back and check, but still, he's not necessarily going to be at 100%. So, and as we all mentioned, I think we do every time that JT plays Penn State. Wouldn't it be nice to see him go all out like he did a couple years ago?
JT, just go wreck the game,
and
man.
Jack Sawyer, come on, guys.
Just go wreck the game. It'll make things way easier. Oh, by the way, it'll make things easier on your DB, Denzel Burke, who a couple games in a row now has been getting picked on. He's starting to scare me Halloween time. I'm starting to be like, man, please do not throw at number 10. So Burke has some questions he's got to answer on that field.
Yeah, he's going to have to play the villain today at Beaver Stadium. Now, speaking of game time fears, Halloween was on Thursday, but here in the Football Fever, we are embracing the spirit of the holiday this morning. The team was busy preparing for Penn State, but Emeka Buka and Caleb Downs took a moment to reminisce on their favorite Halloween costumes as kids. Take a listen.
Probably my most memorable costume growing up, I was Urkel one year. So that's definitely my mom's favorite. She sends a picture to me, every time Halloween passes. So that's definitely one for my mom. Shout out to my mom.
I was a big Power Rangers kid as a kid. I was a red Power Ranger. So that was my favorite one.
Had to be the star, right?
Had to be the star. Had to be the star.
Go, Caleb Downs! But it's morphin' time here on the Football Fever with a blast from the past from some of our favorite Halloween costumes growing up. And if you didn't get that reference just there, you didn't watch the Power Rangers. But guys, we're going to start, I believe, with me. Yep. Okay, so I have to rattle myself for a minute there. It's a sorting hat. First and foremost, I think I would be Slytherin. I according to online tests, I'm Ravenclaw. But also, I haven't seen the first movie fully. So I was the biggest Harry Potter fake fan growing up.
Wow. A pretend Harry Potter
Harry Potter fan. I don't know why. I guess I just wanted to be cool like everybody else. But it's on my list. And there's Dave, our Dave Holmes.
Oh, nice.
Is that Dave?
There's little Dave as a clown there.
Okay.
Very fitting for him. No, I'm just kidding. I love Dave. He's rocking the clown costume. I think up next we have our Ben Buchanan.
What am I?
That's actually Ben.
I mean,
That's Batman.
I peaked when I was 7. What can I say? You know, I'm just trying to make the world a safer, better place for all of you. So I do what I can.
We
young Bruce
appreciate
Wayne.
that, Ben.
You know, so thank you.
Now get this, Ben. Apparently, Obi and Jay didn't have any evidence from their childhood of dressing up on Halloween and trick-or-treating. So
Wow.
what they would have liked to be our
Obi wanted to be
producer.
Batman.
That looks good.
That's a good-looking Batman.
Who
Wore it better.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Same bat time, same bat channel. I used to love Batman, man. Bat cave, bat car. Yeah.
That looks good.
Oh.
Yeah. That's right up your alley, Jay Rich.
Oh my
There you
goodness,
go.
that's perfect.
Big Thanos, right?
Always wanted to be Thanos. He's my favorite character in all the Marvel movies.
You
I
and
rooted for
DeJuan
Thanos.
Jones.
I wanted him to win in the end. And there's the gauntlet right there. That looks perfect.
There you go. Shout out to our producers, Stu Osborne, for setting that one up.
Hey, you had a little Prince bang, though.
You see what's going on?
We love it. All right, Big Thanos. Now coming up, a Penn State parent trap, if you will. An Ohio boy under center for Penn State and a Pennsylvania kid is leading the Buckeyes. Will Howard and Drew Aller find themselves behind enemy lines, but according to OSU's QB1, he wouldn't have it any other way, and he feels he has something to prove. That's coming up on the Football Fever.
Drew Aller's an Ohio kid playing for Penn State. On the other sideline, you have Will Howard, a Pennsylvania kid playing for the Buckeyes. Now, Will Howard grew up cheering for these Nittany Lions. Listen to what he had to say about going against his hometown team.
Stoked. I'm stoked. I cannot wait. It's going to be a homecoming for me. I grew up a Penn State fan. I wanted to go there my whole life. They didn't think I was good enough. But I guess we'll see next week if I was.
Will Howard not shying away from the challenge. Those are fighting words, guys, as we bring in the crew back in our Columbus studio. What do you think about your starting quarterback getting a little chirpy, chip on the shoulder, kind of running a little smack here 1 week before he faces his hometown team?
Well, Dave, Will Howard better back those comments up today, right, guys?
Wow.
I mean, you don't want to provide any bulletin board material, and maybe you kind of make that proclamation after you win.
Yeah.
Not that I'm doubting Will Howard's ability, but if you say go back it up, Jay, what are your thoughts on hearing that from Will Howard?
You know, I love a quarterback that's got a little fire. We all want a guy that's got a chip on his shoulder that feels like he has something to prove. We just don't need that guy telling the opposing team a week before kickoff, hey, I got something to prove, and I'm going to show you guys what I was going to. You know, hey, take it easy. Take it easy. Just keep that on the inside and show it with your play out there, because reality of it is he at the time wasn't good enough to go there, so he ended up at K-State and then eventually became a Buckeye. But if you were to look at it the other way, you could say, oh, it seems like, oh, you're good enough for Ohio State but not Penn State. No, none of it really matters. Are you good enough this morning at noon kickoff to be able to go out there and lead your football team? That's all we care about.
You know, I think it's a call to action to self, to be honest with you. I like the fact that he said that, to say that. I think great competitors do that, right? They create the game within the game. What is the game within the game that I can have that little bit of more motivation for me to go out there and perform the way that I know I can? I think that's what Will Howard is doing. I like it. I like when the quarterback kind of talks a little smack, because, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of almost like your punter going down there and smacking somebody in the mouth. You're like,
Lord.
dang, man, the punter just knocked the dude out, right? This is type of stuff that just kind of gets you
I
going.
like it. Get the team going. Happy to provide a little entertainment for you there.
Yeah.
Obi.
I mean, holding himself accountable publicly.
Yeah, and I don't think he came off of a great game, right? There's some question marks out there about Will Howard and stuff. And now he did what he said is like, I guess we'll see, right? I mean, he didn't say I'm gonna go out here and prove myself. He said, they said I guess I wasn't good enough to be recruited, and I guess I'll go out here at noon and we'll figure out that, we'll answer that question, if you will.
I like it as long as you play within yourself, right? You don't want a quarterback pressing, right? Trying to make throws that he really shouldn't, fit balls into small windows. All of a sudden you have a pick. All of a sudden it starts to unravel, right? Play within yourself, Will Howard. Trust the game plan. Listen, that's an interesting thought, right? Stoked. Normally you're right. You downplay it. Then when you win, then maybe you talk a little like that. But to put it out there, I like the bravado as long as we can back it up, as long as we're just not pressing today, right? Play within yourself and be a champion.
Maybe
I like that
personality. Maybe that's the personality that we need.
Maybe.
Right, I do
Fair
like
enough.
that edge from Will Howard, but I kind of side with Jay. Maybe keep that in the locker room conversation until you go out there and get some stuff done.
Come on, Jay.
I kind of see what you're saying.
But I do see what you're saying.
He's trying to spark his guys and get them going. Maybe he's playing some mind games with himself. Like, I got to get myself going and get this team going. And this team is fighting to find an identity.
Sure.
Right.
I just know that, man, if Abdul and the boys get a hold of him in that first quarter, he's not feeling good. That's all they've been listening to all week long.
Right.
That's all they've been playing. So, boy, you better be ready.
Will providing extra motivation for himself, but also providing some extra motivation for that Penn State defensive line. Now, coming up, are we rattled, gentlemen? A close win over Big Red has some fans a little nervous, but should they be? What Ohio State's nail-biting victory says about the rest of the season. This is the Football Fever. We'll be right back to break it down. Welcome back to the Football Fever. Guys, a win's a win, right? Looking at last weekend against Nebraska, we're used to seeing Ohio State blow out every team out of the water. But for instance, that 2002 season shows that the scoreboard doesn't always reflect how dominant a team really is, right?
Exactly where I was going to go.
So with that being said, a close win over Nebraska. Are you rattled by the score and how the performance was?
The score doesn't rattle me. The performance rattles me a little bit just because of one position group, that's the Ohio State offensive line. But I don't care about close football games when you know it's going to be a tough season. The Big Ten is some great football, by the way, this year. I don't know if you've watched a lot of Big Ten football this year. It might be the best conference in football. It's the most competitive. So you're going to see a lot of teams beating up on each other. And I love that you brought up the 0-2 team. There were games where we won with a last-second field goal, a last-second touchdown, a last-second interception. There were so many things that little things that could have gone one or two ways where we lose those games. So you don't worry about the close win. You worry about how your team performs and rallies. I don't think it's a bad thing that Ohio State had to really have their backs against the wall and were down in the fourth quarter versus Nebraska. And they had to have a gotta-have-it drive where they marched down the field and got into the end zone, and it was critical that they do that. That's important. That builds character. But it's how things happen, guys. It's can you still do it without penalties, and can you still do it with your offensive line playing well and getting all your keys and checks?
Right.
If you can do that and still get the win, I'm fine with it being a close game. That's a good thing for a team.
Well, as Jay just touched on, too, the Big Ten this year is so tough to play. I mean, look at Indiana, guys.
Yeah.
So with their performance against Nebraska, Obi, where do you kind of stand? Are you a little bit rattled by that, or?
You know what? I'm not sure. At the end of the day, I think that with Jay, what you're saying is essentially like, okay. I think at the end of the day, I'm looking at the expectations, right? Where are we expectation-wise? And are our expectations out of balance with what we're seeing? We're saying, our expectations are national championship, but what is the steps? What's the road to that national championship? And just because it doesn't always look the way that we want it to look, does that mean that Ohio State's not going to get to the national championship? Again, kind of piggybacking what Jay was saying, I'm not really concerned about the score, but the efficiency in which you actually went about the game. How was the game managed? And some of those things I'm more concerned about than the score, because I think the score could have been different if the game was managed a little different. So those are the things that I kind of look at. But again, the expectations, if the expectations were not so high in Columbus, I don't think this team would be under that level of scrutiny. But historically, that's what we do, right? Ohio State, we expect Big Ten championships, national championships, so we're scrutinizing this team, rightfully so, but I'm not concerned about score. I'm more concerned about efficiency.
Quickly, I just would say you have to win your clunkers, right? If you're a good football team, you have to get it across the line, do what you have to do. It's been a strange middle part of the season, right? We lost that game at Oregon. Oregon was not a clunker of a game. You're playing the number 2 team in America in Autzen Stadium. You have a bye week, versus Nebraska. That was really the first clunker of the year. Yes, we'd like it to be better, but let's breathe a little here. I don't know. That's
coming off that bye too, a little slow start, but as you mentioned, facing that adversity in the fourth quarter, I think that'd be great to set them up for some adversity, I'm sure. Today at Beaver Stadium. But guys, we're midway through the season. At this point, do you feel that this team has what it takes to win it all? I think today will be very telling of that.
So if you go back to 2002, there are probably points in that season where if you asked folks, is this a championship football team? They were going, nah, man. They had a back and forth with Cincinnati. There were some struggles with Purdue. We're not sure. If you went to the 2014 team when they lost, to Virginia Tech, and you ask people, is this a championship team? They probably would have said no. So you can't really build or say, yes, this is the championship team right now. You don't know what's going to happen down the road, and you don't know how health is going to factor into everything. But what you can say is, and I like what Obi said with how are games being managed? How are coaches coaching? How are situational footballs situations being handled? And I don't know that it's always being handled as well as it could, because some of these games that have been close really didn't need to. I could clearly watch that Oregon game and go, I could see Ohio State winning that game by 10 points.
Yes.
Good point.
If things are managed a little bit different. I could watch the Nebraska game and say, I could see Ohio State winning that game by 2 touchdowns comfortably if it's managed a little bit differently. So you have to decide as a ball club, and this is the coaching staff, are we going to continue to evolve? Are we going to put guys in the best possible positions for success so that we're not the reason all of this talent doesn't get it done on the field?
Great point.
I like what you're saying about evolving, because that's one of the, I think there's probably 3 or 4 elephants in the room, but I think one of the other elephants in the room is, are our players getting better? Are Ohio State defensive players getting better? So we talk about JT Tuimoloau and how he played 2 years ago at Penn State. Is he better now than he was when he made those plays? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? So those are the things that I'm looking at as a former player, as a fan, but also as a commentator, as someone who evaluates. I'm looking, is each individual getting better? I'm not sure. But I think today, again, I know we're kind of beating this horse, but I think there's a lot of questions to be answered today.
And a lot to prove today.
We'll have an opportunity today. I love the phrase killer instinct, right? If you're an athlete, you know that, whether you're a sharpshooter in basketball, whether you're playing the game of football. I have in my notes here, the great Michael Jordan. I know Jay's a LeBron guy. I'm an MJ guy. I got to say.
I love MJ.
One thing about Michael Jordan, he's not the tallest at 6'6". He's agile, certainly, but everybody talked about him. He was that guy, man. It was that killer instinct, that fear factor. So JT, come have a day today, man. I mean, just the revitalization of him, this defense, have this identity. No better opportunity, right? Top 5 matchup in Beaver Stadium. I'm ready for this one.
Braun scored more points in the fourth quarter career-wise than Jordan. Anyways, get on back to the show.
I like it for the Cleveland native here. Okay, now Beaver Stadium, guys, we all know it's loud, it's rowdy, and most of all, it's intimidating. But Penn State isn't the only team in the country with incredible home field advantage. Coming up, we'll break down the toughest places to play, and we will share our game day stories in enemy territory. You are watching The Football Fever. We'll be right back.
Settings. There's nothing like the
Not a whiteout at night game, but still Penn State undoubtedly is one of the toughest game day atmospheres for opponents, especially, like I mentioned, if it is a whiteout. But they're not the only team with punishing home field advantage, courtesy of the crowd. Y'all know where I'm going with this one. Neyland is a top 5 game day experience in all of college football. Alabama was called for 15 penalties in its loss to Tennessee this year. 3 false starts. Over 101,000 fans reached 26.4 decibels, guys, with the crowd noise. It is deafening at Neyland. It gets rocking there. A lot of home field advantage there for Tennessee.
Very cool.
You show a lot of love to Tennessee.
In my defense,
you show a lot of love to Tennessee.
Listen, in my defense, I was at Denny Bryant Stadium for Alabama. I was at Kentucky. I was at Penn State. Penn State is a really rough place to play. It was still loud in noon kick, but man, Neyland, when it's rocking, guys, it is loud.
What you guys got?
You
know what? I go with Wisconsin. Wisconsin was probably the most intimidating atmosphere. I remember we walking out for pregame. They said, put your helmets on and make sure they're strapped. And I was like, what in the world? And ice balls just started coming, hitting us in the helmet and shoulder pads.
Crazy.
Different atmosphere, Camp Randall, for sure.
What about you, Jay?
I'm piggybacking off of this. I have the same one, Wisconsin, and heading into the tunnel on that game on the road in a really big game. I think it was like 2005, it was 2003, something like that. I remember the same exact thing being told to me, put your helmet on, strap it up, but it wasn't for snowballs, it was quarters. The fans were throwing quarters at the players at the opposing team, which was us, and banging us in the helmets. And you hear this loud, high-pitched ringing noise in your ears, and it was like quarters bouncing off your helmet.
Nice.
And then Lee Evans, I believe it was, wide receiver, killed us on an out and up, hitch and go, whatever you want to call it, and won that game. And the flight home, the bus ride to the airport was brutal. We got yelled at. I had PTSD from that night. So,
wow, tough place. Ben, what about you?
Penn State. I mean, I know we're there today. Noon, I will say, noon obviously different than the nighttime environment, but that whiteout, 111, 112,000 plus in there. You're just going up to the stadium. It looks like that erector set. It's like both sides are almost this tidal wave of people. I remember punting the football. Normally you can see, the sky beyond. You just see a sea of people when you hit the ball. And just an amazing environment. Tough one for the Bucs today in Beaver Stadium.
Well, we'll have more to get to coming up after the break. Stick with us. You were watching the Football Fever. They get it done today. Yeah. The offensive line's got to step up. They got to run the ball. They got to grind out a win today at Happy Valley. What about you guys?
Buckeyes by 3.
I like it. 31-28 is my score.
Why not? Buckeyes blow them out by 3 touchdowns.
Let's go.
I like it. Let's manifest it. Hopefully they treat us with a win today and no tricks in Happy Valley. Go Buckeyes.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.